Welcome everyone. A lot of new people here, new faces. Always good to see. For the people who are new here, I can give you a tour afterwards. Yeah, ask someone with a yellow piece. Yeah. We have Anouk here today. We are very happy to have her here. And the initial question was, Anouk, do you want to see the hackerspace? And she said, yes, cool, great. I'm going to do a lecture also. Okay. So I'm very pleased that she is willing to be here and give the presentation. She's very famous about his spider trash and FashionTech, I have to say it right.
Yeah.
So you can tell a little bit about it and also the practical part about it. And if you want to know more about the practical part, we have 3D printers here, laser cutters, Arduino, so we can also show you that afterwards. So, floor is yours.
Perfect. Super awesome, and thank you guys for coming on this Saturday. I am here on behalf of the Dutch Innovation Days, which is happening at the moment in Enschede. So it's like it has been like 3 days of us running around non-stop in Enschede. So we have been seeing a lot of cool buildings and cool stuff here. The Dutch Innovation Days is there to promote cross collaboration of like businesses and all kinds of creative stuff within Enschede. And I'm also part of it. And I'm here to tell a little bit about my work, hoping to get you guys more enthusiastic for working with electronics and Arduinos and all of that stuff. I combine it myself with fashion, so I create something called FashionTech or robotic couture. So I play around a lot with robots because I really like them. And I put them on the body and I see what they can do. So that's a little bit what I do. To just get a sense of what you guys know about electronics, who has been playing around with Arduinos or any kind of microcontrollers? Good, nice. And who has been like 3D modeling, 3D printing? Awesome, cool. What do you use for like software? Nice, cool. Yeah, Blender, open source from the Netherlands, yay. So who else, what software do you use? Same? OpenSCAD. Oh, that's from our friend Marius Kintel. He's from the hackerspace in MetaLab. He started to develop that there. That's really cool. It's nice to hear. Yeah, what are you using for? I only work with Arduino. Okay. Yeah, and you like working with Arduino? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love them. So I started with fashion design. I thought it was cool. You can express yourself through fashion and all of that stuff. And at one point, I got really bored with it because for me it was very analog. It was not something that I could really change towards my behavior or something. It was just cloth. So I started to combine it with my other sort of fascination for robotics, and that is how I got to do this, and I've been doing this for the last 20 years. I started out with putting really big computers on the body, so I always say it looked nice from the front, but you turned around and it was this like, rah! It was this really big computer on the back of the design, which is not super sexy. And then in 2005, 2006, I got in contact with people from Arduino. David Kwartiles, he went to Sweden, to Malmö, and they started to look at what they could do with the Arduino platform, and they were inviting all kinds of sort of activists and hackers and people, just all kinds of people to their lab. And that is how I got to work with Arduino for the first time. And some people came there to make like robotic cars or the first drone sort of, and I got there to create fashion. And for me, the Arduino platform, it was a smaller form factor, which was really good for me, for my designs. And over the years, technology got smaller and smaller, so that has been very fortunate for me. So let me see if I can start my presentation. If you want to know more about me, this is my name. You can find me online. And does it work? Woo! Yeah, so what I do is I work with the body, so I put things on the body, and I'm really interested in what these things can do, from like communication, expression, and all of that stuff. I use both body sensors, and I also use things like proximity sensors, IR, temperature sensors to measure the distance, so the spaces around us. In this case, I'm measuring these spaces, the intimate, the personal, the social, and the public space, and these are all spaces that we have around us. This is based on the proxemics theory of Edward T. Hall, and in the 60s he found that a lot of people have different spaces around them, and that's very like from culture to culture and from person to person. And he wrote about his research in a book called The Hidden Dimension, which I got. These spaces, they have been like criticized because he created these circles, and people say like, what about things in the back, sort of. There's some feminist theories that also nag a little bit about his theory, but this is basically the base sort of circles. And when in the 60s there were no things like proximity sensors yet, sort of, he was measuring this with a stick. So it was a wooden stick, and he was measuring people's like spaces, sort of. So I basically took his research and I used proximity sensors. I'm using ultrasonic rangefinders, for example, and using these spaces in some of my works. So one of the works that you can really see that, and again, if you guys want to see the screen more, you might want to sit more here, but is the spider dress. So I created a version in 2010 through a friend of mine, Daniel Schatzmeier, and we were at the Meta Lab in Vienna, and he showed me this game. It's called Limbo, and in Limbo there's this like little spider in there, and when you move the boy towards the spider legs, it started to attack, and I thought that was really cool. So the first design, which I unfortunately not show here, was laser cut, and it was based on the game Limbo. And then when I was working at Intel later in 2015, I had the opportunity to recreate this design, also using a set of plexiglass, using 3D printing and SLS and PA12. So the whole dress is from nylon, but it still is working the same way. So it has these proximity sensors in the front. So they're basically here. So it's two ultrasonic rangefinders that are measuring the front, and it sees when people step into these spaces, and especially the personal space. So you can see that. Woo. If it wants to work, might be a problem here. No, it works. So here you can see what the dress does. The dress is attacking. So when you step in a personal space, this dress is literally attacking, and not in just one way, would be super boring. So I put something in there called what I call myself 12 states of behavior. So depending on how you interact with this dress, how you walk up to it, and your speed, it picks one of these states. So when you come very close, very sort of nearby, it might react more aggressive than when you're standing off a little bit further. If you come very close, then in the intimate space, it also like pushes you away. And was kind of funny because we presented this at CES, which is a big technology trade show, and everybody at that time in 2015 wants to make like selfies, and then the dress kept poking them, sort of, So I didn't got any harassment suits of like, hey, your dress poked my eye and all of that stuff, but it could have happened, sort of. But it was like, disclaimer, don't come too close. So it was either way part of the statement, I guess. Sometimes I like to integrate all the electronics and all the cables and all the technology. Sometimes I really like to show it, especially if I want to make it more educational, because you can walk up to the design like, these are the sensors, this is where they go, this is where the battery goes, and all of that stuff. So I'm using like snake wire, and I make it all like look cool. So here you can see the back piece, which has the battery and the system. This was for Intel, so I used an Intel Edison, and you see basically all the cables go into the design. Boop. I might want to ask you to push the push the button. Oh, no, and then I'm going to give you this one. Yeah. If you want to try to push it one time, I think it will start a little movie. So there you can see the back piece, and I think you can see the sensors. It has a respiration sensor in there because the first design it was always attacking, but if you are wearing it or the model is wearing it and standing in front of it, it's always attacking. And I thought that was not interesting. That was not really symbiotic for the system. So there's also a respiration sensor built in this design. So the wearer, the model can like breathe in and breathe out, and the system goes into like a sleepy state, sort of. So without like pushing a button, and it goes into that sleepy state, you can actually do that. You can put that out with your long volume over respiration, which is kind of cute, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think so, yeah. So yeah, that's the spider dress. Also made like little spider bots that were like walking behind the dress, which was really cute. Not handy if there's a big crowd and you have people stepping on them. So then we want to make them squeak. So later on we had them on a podium, for example, when we go to maker fairs, and children could like program the little spider bots and they could make them dance. So it was kind of a really cute thing. Yeah, human push button. Yay! I will just do this, and then you're gonna be the yeah, and then I'm gonna just put this here. Another of my designs is the smoke dress, which had 7 versions. Some were successful, some were not. I started with a system with dry ice and a sort of a drip system, which created the smoke. That was the first one. It's not really good if you're working with a human model and studio lights. So I scrapped that idea after the photo shoot. And then I started to hack really big like smoke machines, which were like really big on the body again, sort of. Up to this system, which is 500 grams. It's working with silicone fluid and a hot nozzle. The silicone fluid is kind of cool because you can work with the smoke in the space, so you can make it high hanging, low hanging. So depending on the space, I would feel first what kind of environment there is, and then you can choose your silicone fluid almost. And this dress is based on the another animal, so octopus. So we call it the inkvis in Dutch. It pushes out ink so it can escape. This dress was a little bit the notion of sort of having like sensors. It has sensors. It measures the amount of people that are in the direct surroundings of this dress, and it starts to basically smoke more. You're gonna do this for like 60 slides, so you're in for a workout. So that's the dress. It was in 2011, I believe, so it was 11 years back. This was the first dress that I fully 3D printed. I created it with a friend of mine, Italian architect Niccolo Casas, and it was really the first dress that we really tried to get out of a 3D printer. It's more like a shell style, sort of. And if you go further, and push one more time. And here you can see the dress. So the dress is created from the side parts are PA12, which is a really hard material, but you could print really big pieces out of it. It's over a process called selective laser sintering, so powder printing process at Materialize in Belgium that I was collaborating with then. The frontal piece is TPU because then it could form around the body. TPU is thermoplastic polyurethane, so it's more flexible, it's more rubbery, so it could create that movement sort of. And if you push one more time. So that was the final dress. The dress was being showcased at a show for Volkswagen. I created 8 designs. They were all controlled over the DMX controller of the room, over Zigbee protocol, the XPs. So they all had a little XP in them connecting to the DMX. So they were like timed, basically. The show was, I believe, 6 days, and they were showing, I believe, 10 times a day. I had one moment that I actually set off the smoke alarm of the whole building with a smoke dress. So the client was not super happy with that, but it was kind of also a funny thing because I did not know, I never had experienced that this smoke actually set off these the sort of the fire things. So the whole building needed to be evacuated. But then the boss of Volkswagen, he thought it was funny. So he was also a really great guy. Huh? It was a very, yeah, and the media didn't even wrote about it. They wrote about the show, so that was really good. I was like, then the show was good, so yeah. I also started to make, actually with Marius Kintel, who made OpenSCAD, and Jane Tingley, who's now his wife, and we did an artist in residency at Museumskwartier. We created a piece called the Dare Droid 2.0, and it was a dress that worked on the game of truth or dare, and if you play the game, you get a shot of alcohol, and if you don't play it well, then you don't sort of. And that's a little bit a derivative of this one, so I should have presented the Dare Droid because it's really fun. It was like a very early design, but you can look it up. But out of that came that I started to work with creating cocktail dresses, so dresses that are making cocktails. I did that for Cirque du Soleil. And if you push one further. So this is a dress, and this is the simple version without a game, but it has a peristaltic pump on the back. The peristaltic pump is an open source peristaltic pump from a company called Open Party Robotics, and they're really cool. They make also smaller versions now that I'm exploring with. So it has just one peristaltic pump on the back. I'm currently making a design that has 6 of them, so it can also mix drinks. So that's kind of cool as well. So I'm trying to explore with colors, but then I also want to put smoke in it, so then it becomes more difficult. But and the back piece looks really cool because all these small peristaltic pumps are in it, and it looks super alien-like. But this one was surfing gin and tonic, was for Cirque du Soleil. If you go one further, maybe. This one is already doing it. So it's the front piece. She has a button, and the peristaltic pump is moving. Let's see. No. Okay, still, sorry. That's the peristaltic pump in the back, so that's all in the back piece, and the tubes you can see. And if you go one further, so that's the restaurant in Ibiza. Cirque du Soleil does theater. Yeah, I'm not super theater person, but they said like, okay, we also have a nightclub in Las Vegas, and we have a restaurant in Ibiza, and I really like that because it's really person-to-person interactions. So yeah, this is Heart Ibiza. It's still there. Supposedly, the cocktail dresses are still walking around because sometimes people see them and they make a photo and they send it to me. I'm like, great, they still have them running because I don't hear that they are broken. So that's kind of a good sign, I think. The picture and and I don't know. No, it's a pretty simple system, so I just hope that they never broke them because it's really hard. No. And also I needed to have a component, and it took like 10 days. And I was like, why does it take so long? And somebody needed to put it on the boat. Boat needed to, so it's really hard to tinker, to make stuff on an island. And I experienced it during this project, sort of. But no, then they definitely need a makerspace there. That would be super cool. Somehow island life and makerspaces and hackerspaces never really go together. I think that should be a concept. It's really fun because I'm not super a holiday person. I want to make stuff, so then I always end up doing things in my hotel, and that's like sometimes a little bit awkward, sort of. But yeah, this dress, so it has the logo in the front, and that's also where the little cup is in, and they walk around. I also created a series of more dresses. Their whole restaurant is based on food, fashion, music, and experiment. So they have these things, you bite in something, but you also see a performance with smoke, so it really does all kinds of messed up things with your brain, sort of. So they invited me to make some designs based on food. So this is a successful design. I also made a dress that was shooting bubblegum. Which was a little bit too aggressive design, so we don't use it anymore because it was actually shooting it into people's faces. So they said like, that was a nice one, but we hold it just for the display, sort of. And I'm still working on that one because I was thinking maybe it can the chewing gum can like go around the body or something like that. But so these are in multiple colors, and they're walking around there. Yeah, so what I try to do is using technology, putting technology on the body, and asking the question, what can it do more than blinking and bleeping? So how can it become social and playful like the cocktail dress? How can it become defensive and behavioral like the spider dress concepts? And how can it become more expressive, sensitive, emotional like the smoke dress? So both in style, like for example the spider dress has this deep V shape sort of, and looks very eerie when you look at it, and it actually also attacks you. you. When you come close to, the smoke dress is more pear-shaped and more organic, more friendly almost, and the interaction is also a little bit like that. So my background is fashion design, and I studied interaction design, so interaction is really important in this field and for my work. So if you push it, seeing fashion as an interface, social interface, playful interfaces, emotional interfaces, so whatever like this sort of research takes you. So I just wanted to forward my talk to talk about these things. One is space data, one is collaborations, prototyping, body signals, and then ending with open source. So that's the next 20 to 30 minutes that I'm talking about this. And first is space data, because I like data. So what I'm wearing is, I like the movement here. It's a dress that's based on meteor data, and that is taken from the Global Meteor Network. That is a network, and it's open source. It's from Dennis Vida, and it's basically sort of an open source networking where people are buying Raspberry Pis with a camera, putting it towards the sky and observing we call fallende sterren or meteors, and that all comes into the Global Meteor Network. And I want to work with data from space, and so I thought this was really interesting to connect to an address. I created it originally for the founders of Virgin Galactic. They have an event called Yuri's Night, and it's like a space event. And Loretta Whitesize was wearing this design. Now we had for the Dutch Innovation Days Anna Schemberere. She's a science journalist, and she was opening the evening. And I said, like, oh, this dress might be interesting for Anna because her interest is also in space. So I created a new version, so this one. And here you can see how it basically works. I think if you push one more time. So that's it's very simple connection. It's the Raspberry Pi and basically LEDs in this case, sort of. I had to tell Anna, if you present it, it can maybe not work because sometimes there's no nothing to be observed, and that's super awkward for you. And she said like, oh yeah, that's gonna be weird. But fortunate enough during the event, things were visible, and so that's kind of the cool thing on that. And then if you push it again. So yeah, that's the design from up close. And then I guess we have a shot of Anna wearing it in the end. So she's really cool. Look her up. She does. We know her from a space program. I forgot the name of it. Do you know the name? Yeah, she did a really cool covering like space, and she was in America and everywhere. Her name is Anna Schemberere. Collaborations, one of the things that you can see in Connect You, it's open until 6 o'clock today, so it's part of the Dutch Innovation Days, is a collection that I created for Audi. Audi came up to me, they said like, oh, we have a car. I said like, okay, that's cool. And they said like, do you want to do something with it? Because we think that the style fits your design, sort of, you know. So I took it pretty literally. I took out the parking sensors and used the high, sort of the matrix lights, and I put that in the garments. So if you are later on going to Connect You, I think René's going there, and they have like a little exhibition. It's really cool. A lot of like interactive designs there, and so you guys should go after that. It's open until 6. And here you can see the headlights of the car, so super bright LEDs, which is a little bit hard to put on the body. So I'm actually working with LiPo batteries in here, which I normally don't want to do, but in order to get the powerful lights out there. And this is one more. This is part of the development process. This one I never made in the end, but it was the idea of also having mechanic pieces move out and then the light coming through. But then the next one, this one actually I created is the projection map dress. So it sees the polygons and it traces the models, and then it's projecting upon the models while there was a live show going on, sort of. And one more time. Yeah, so here you can see that. If you're testing this out on mannequins, it's cool because they stand still. Models, not so much. So it was really hard. The cameras were following, but it's you see that it's not fully exactly like lining up because it's just really hard for them also to see where they're standing. But the effect was still pretty cool. So the cameras, there were LED screens behind. And then the cameras were like tracing the dresses and then projecting up on it. And this one really gives the light, sort of. The other designs were really lighting up. You can go to the next one. And next one. So yeah, one of my early designs were really messy. This is the Pseudomorphs. It's a design that worked with ink and solenoid valves from Festo. They didn't have liquid solenoid like valves at that time, so I used their air valves. So they were not super happy of me doing that, but I said like, nah, you need to make liquid valves then. But yeah, that's what I ended up using for this system, and it's a little bit to show a process. So this was 2006, I believe. So I worked first with a fascination. In this case, it was a fascination for the drip of ink that you put in water, and it makes this magical dance. And I wanted to translate that into a dress. So then I make like an sort of an impression of how I think that should look like, and that's a little bit my red line of when I design. And I go always back, because when you're designing, you can think of like, ooh, that's cool, and a sketch or some thing like that always puts you back into that process. Then you're gonna figure out what kind of things you can get. At that time, I was doing an artist in residency at V2, which is in Rotterdam. It's a really cool institute for unstable media. And they said I needed like tubes and valves, and they said like, oh, we have connection to the hospital. Do you want to go there? So I went there, and then I got stuff that I still don't know what it is, but I made it into my system in the end. I think it's like pain valves and pumps and all of that stuff. And then, yeah, in the end, I actually went to Festo to find a better solution, working then from the inspiration with working with those tubes. So here you can see the solenoids that I'm working with in the end. So basically, they open up. The ink is condensed in in these sort of pockets, and so there's always pressure on the system. So when you open these, then the ink just goes through. And that is one of them. Was the first time that I used Eagle with V2. Also used a big 9-volt battery, which in the end was not really needed, but we didn't know exactly. Also using a really big heatsink that was not needed in the end. So the system could have been much smaller, but it was really cool for me for the first time. That was like, yeah, I don't know exactly. This was 2010. This board then to work with printed circuit boards and using Eagle to make your own boards. So the dresses in the end, they were like dripping ink. And each dress was coloring based on chemical treatment that I did in the dress. So when it dripped the ink on there, you always get like really different kind of stains on there, which looks very poetic, but then in the end, when you present it, it's basically a model standing in a really big pool with ink, right? So it was during ICEA, which is a kind of an experimental thing, but they gave me this really nice gallery, thinking there was fashion being presented, and then I messed it all up by making everything purple, which they could laugh at the end. But it was kind of cool because all these dresses were being produced. She took them off, and then we hang them all around the model, so it was kind of a performance piece as well. So that was kind of cool. Then I got in contact with a stylist in America, and she really liked the idea of using ink. So I ended up working with her on Britney Spears. This is not Britney Spears herself, it's a double kanger, but there you see her. LA is very fast, so the project needs to be done pretty fast. So in where I like to work on more details, sort of. That was not the case here. So the fabric that was used was more synthetic. So I think it didn't absorb the color too much, and we also just made a tinkering kind of thing of the ink being pushed out from her fingers. But that's basically evolved from the Pseudomorphs, working with ink into this piece for her clip. I think it's called Hold It Against Me. It was 12 years ago or something like that. So yeah, that's a little bit about prototyping. Prototyping you can do around the body, you can also do it on the body. So part of my work that I do is also working with prosthetics, and I do that through this really cool, badass girl. Her name is Victoria Modesta. And she's really an advocate for sort of prosthetic and bionic legs and being bionic. She lost her leg pretty early on in life, and she needed to wear prosthetic legs. And instead of having the flashy color, normal-looking leg, she really wanted to show it off that it's not a flaw. It's actually something that's really cool. So she started to make like art legs, and together with her, the last 10 years, I've been making over I think 8 or 10 legs with her or for her. We worked on some spikes that were lighting up. Here you can see the smoke leg, in where the idea of the smoke dress, she steps into the leg and it starts to smoke. For Sonifica, that's the name of this project, was for Art Miami in 2016, I believe. It's a leg with an accelerometer in there, so the prosthetic leg has an accelerometer. She can move her leg, make music, and she can sonify the music using this 3D printed tusk design. And then also the latest project that I did with her was just before COVID started for Rolls-Royce. I worked with Tesla coils, like really big Tesla coils, before with friends of mine called Architect. They are really famous in America for their Tesla coils. And I make their suits, so Faraday suits basically. And then we work with talent, like we had one time a breakdancer with Red Bull in these Faraday suits in between the coils. But what I wanted to do is basically use a really small Tesla coil and make the effect happen within the leg. So part of the design was to make her stand on 2 little side pieces, and that gave me the opportunity to work with a whole void space within her leg, so her ghost leg almost. So the effect could happen within her prosthetic leg. So this is the prototype of how that looks like. So it's basically the system is in the heel. The shoes are created with United Nude. It's a Dutch designer, Rem. He makes shoes. So we collaborated with him. If you push one more time. And that's the cool sound it makes. So this is how it looks bare. So this is the system. Here it's built in, and there you can see the effect happening. Here you can see the effect happen, and then you see it being repeated up, sort of. So I think you need to push 4 times to start all the movies. Yeah. And the heel of the shoe had the sort of the system and the battery and the heat sinks. Then you can see the little Tesla coil here goes up to the leg, and that's where sort of a Jacob's ladder effect is happening. And 2 more times, and 1 more time. Yes. So there you can see some of the details. And 1 more time. Yeah, so that's that project. I think it's really cool because it's pretty like sort of an engineering marvel what we pulled off there, and the effect is also really cool. So yeah, you can look up this clip and you can see some more behind the scenes of that as well. And 1 more. So then, the other thing I talked a lot about measuring the surroundings using, proximity sensors and all of that stuff. I also measure the body itself. There's all cool ways that you can measure the body. You can think of like brain signals. You can think of muscle contraction, EDA, galvanic skin response, respiration, so your lung volume, accelerometers like I did with the leg of Victoria, and also heart rate. Respiration data is really interesting because it's very organic. HRV ECG is a little bit more rational, sort of. So there's a lot of like ways that you can like measure the body.
Sorry, what's HRV and EDA?
EDA is galvanic skin response, so that's this one here. And this is heart rate and heart volume. The variability, yeah, correct. And I think here in Europe or Netherlands you use ECG, or in Germany I think, and in America it's more HRV what people use somehow, but yeah, so I mostly put it both on there, so yeah. Yeah, galvanic skin response is quite interesting. I think the pH of your skin, but the more you sweat, the less you can measure it. So that's always the thing. But I think you can get a lot of like interesting data, like fight or flight, out of that, stressors and maybe anxiety, you know. So I'm quite interested in that. And you can do things with sort of glove. But the more you sweat, the less it is, the more harder it is to measure it actually. So so one of the projects that I did with brain signals was I had a residency for Ars Electronica, which is a really cool media center in Linz that you guys might all know. They do sometimes do artist in residencies in where they invite artists and push them a little bit. So my push or my task was to not make a dress, because they knew Anouk is going to come in and she makes another dress, and they didn't want me to do that. So they wanted me to make a device. And what I really wanted to do was tackle a thing, like something. And I chose children with ADHD, because I always think that children, when they grow up, a lot of people very early on, they give them medication, and I think that's not super good for the child, especially not the child growing up. And I wanted to see if I could create a device, or in this case an BCI, brain-computer interface, in where I could actually make them understand a little bit better how their brain works. So that is what this became. It's called Agent Unicorn. And if you go one more time, and one more time. Here you can read more about the technical stuff and what we actually did about this. Is from IEEE Spectrum that I did a write-up for. I created this horn, so unicorn horn, first of all because unicorns are super awesome. And I always wanted to work with that one time. And second of all, it could really create a third eye on the head, sort of. So you can see a little camera in the unicorn horn of this design. And I'm doing measurements of brain signals. What I didn't want to do is having this whole head full with over 60 electrodes. The children being measured in a white room by a doctor. So I wanted to make it a really playful experience, and also an experience where you can put the headset on the head and also off the head again. So I've been looking around, talking to different neuroscientists, neurotech companies, and I cut in the end. Ars Electronica sent me to somebody called Christoph Guger. He's from the company G-Tech, and he's nearby Linz. So I had a meeting with them, and he mentioned to me using the P3 wave, so the P300 of the ERP, event-related potential. And basically, you can see this as these are the ears, that's the nose, and it makes this sort of mohawk situation on the head. And that was really good for me to use because I could limit the amount of electrodes and channels that I had to use, sort of more over the electrodes, and I could integrate this into my design. So here you can see some of the early sort of the development. So the system is there. You can see the placement for the sensors already. And here you can see the where the sensors are placed in relation to the sort of the P3 wave of medical ED. When you create the device, I mostly tested sort of really sort of wires hanging out and all of that stuff. In the beginning, I had a hard time connecting the camera over the Raspberry Pi to the system. So this is actually where I started to just put the system on top for testing. And then this is the integrated design in the end, how it looks like. So it works with a little camera, Raspberry Pi, and then sort of the controller for the brain signals. And then it uses dry electrodes, so gold-plated dry electrodes, in where I don't need to use any fluids or saline in between to make the connection to the skin. It just goes with little fingers through the hair, sort of, so it makes connection that way. So that's pretty cool. It was actually a success of limiting the amount of electrodes from over 60, which GTech was mainly used to. And they were also, for them it was like an experiment going into this, and me asking like, I want to limit this, and they said like, well, we never did that. It became a success, and we actually brought it out as a device. So it's not Agent Unicorn, but it is a BCI called Unicorn BI. So it is inspired by Agent Unicorn, the project, and it uses 8 electrodes, and we do a lot of like workshops with it, and a lot of hospitals actually use it now, which is pretty cool. So you can do cool stuff using brain signals now. There's this is the product, so you can find it on unicornbi.com. We also do hackathons. If you push it one more time. Oh, and back. I think back and one more time. Normally the hackathons are happening in the real life. With COVID it went online. The hackathon is inspired by Agent Unicorn. Again, it uses the Unicorn BI and the summer school in where GTech with a lot of neuroscientists, neurotech companies. I'm also speaking on Monday and Tuesday. I'm giving a talk there as well. It starts on this Monday, so it's I believe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It is free to attend. It's a digital event, so if you guys are interested in like BCI and neuroscience, you might want to attend it. It's not brain.io, that's part of it. That's the hackathon that we also do on-site and online. But it's called the BCI Summer School, if you guys want to look it up. So that starts on Monday, so if you're enthusiastic for using brain signals in your own work, maybe you might want to go online and check that out. And I think one more time. So that evolved in actually a collaboration between me, GTech, the company, the neurotech company that I work with, and so the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. And that was for the last Ars Electronica, I believe, 2 years ago. And they came up with the notion of like us trying to simplify from 64 electrodes into 8. They wanted to challenge us to go the other way. So actually we ended up with a system with 1024 channels. So that was the other way. To understand, Neuralink is really, really cool what Elon Musk is doing. It is a little bit more invasive, which I don't like about it, but he uses around, I believe, and I might be wrong, 3,700 channels. So it's not by far like the resolution that Neuralink and Elon Musk get with that, but it's definitely a really good resolution to measure with 1024 electrodes. So based on that, they wanted me to make a dress, which is this. So it's the pangolin dress, and it uses movement, light, and sound. And every movement, light, or sound and animation is connected to one of those 1024 channels in a direct intervention with each other. So this is the pangolin grid. The only thing is that people need to shave their head because this doesn't work with gold-plated electrodes. These electrodes actually need to really contact the skin. But fortunately enough, I did a call on Facebook, and a lot of people said, I shaved my head for this. And then we found some models that already had shaved heads. So that was really, really cool. So we've been working with Daliette, the model that you just saw. I worked with her in America. And then GTech worked with Mac from Austria in from the Europe side. But this is the pangolin grid. Currently it's being used for stroke rehabilitation, which is really cool in an sort of medical measurements in hospitals. So that's kind of really cool how that evolved. It's definitely not a wearable system. Each of these little stickers, they are connected to small HDMI cables, and the model also uses a really big box behind her to really get the best resolution out of it, which you will see a little bit later. And one more. Yeah, so that's the end. In the end, became the dress. It's kind of really interesting because if you go in a neutral state, the dress is blue. It's more like normal. It's just wavy sort of. If you go into a meditative state, it becomes purple and it starts to like flow and make sounds more like more elegant sounds sort of. If it goes into more hectic state, if it measures that, it goes like blinking and bleeping and like really moving really hectically. So that's kind of the way that we can look at the dress and then can see in what kind of brain state our model is. during Ars Electronica, we had 3 days, and Mac was connected to the system, and it was quite interesting that the first day they were not connecting at all to each other, the dress and Mac, because they needed to find it out. It also for Mac, for the model, it was really strange to be like in an event and people were watching her, so she felt a little bit, But the third day, she had more control over it, so that was really interesting to see in where she could really make the dress animate by going into a meditative state or a more hectic state and all of that stuff. So that's kind of the cool thing if you're using some things like machine learning and all that. These pieces really start to get to know you, and you can also see that in the interaction. So that's really kind of the cool thing when you're working with body signals. I think one more. It's also one more. I'm not gonna. If you go to one more, I think it's more the. Also, and one more. Yes, and one more. Damn. So this was during Ars Electronica. So here you can see the stickers or the pangolin grid being applied. That's Mac. That's the system. Huh? It's very beefy. But it looked very cool on her, very cyborg. And one more. Yeah, so that was a little bit that. Open source, making and sharing with community is really important. From just the work that I do, I think it's just very, very important. If I work with companies, one of my first questions is always like, if we do a project together, yes, I want to do a project with you. Can we also open source it? The answer is mostly no, and it's mostly because companies are scared of open sourcing. They think that the whole company needs to be open source. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about. But maybe you have this little thing that you can share with the community, and it's actually a very nice thing to do, sort of. Mostly, there's IP connected to things and all of that stuff as soon as you do a collaboration with companies. So that's not always possible, but in my wildest dream at one distant future scenario, I hope that more companies want to work on more like open source level with things. Anna recently told me that because I was interested in working with sound and things from maybe like Saturn and all of that stuff, NASA just opened a library of sounds from space. I think that's really cool if companies do that. And just to see what they have that they can basically open source or share. So we some of you might already know GitHub for code and sort of workflow stuff. Make a Fair. We have René here from the Make a Fair Eindhoven in the audience today. So Make a Fairs are really nice places in where like really the creative community comes together, but also inspires like new generations or people that never made things before, you know. So I think Make a Fairs are super important for to just share the joy for electronics. Thingiverse is sort of a database for 3D models. If you have a 3D model, you can put it online. You might design a wedding ring or something. You just say like, okay, cool, I make a ring, and somebody marries with it. They take it from Thingiverse, and it actually becomes a very precious thing in their lives, you know, while it might have been sitting on your desktop. That's always what I like to use. So it's a really nice database of like people just putting models in there. Instructables from how to make tomato soup to how to make a robotic dress. And Hexer.io is a little bit more hardware related. So these are things that you guys might know. What you might not know is the OpenBCI community. So the things that I just spoke about, brain-computer interfaces, sort of neurotech, neuroscience. There's the community out of San Francisco. That's called OpenBCI. They created an sort of an open source brain-computer interface, and their community is also very active. So that's pretty cool to check out. How I try to do it myself, when I was working for Instructables at Autodesk, I put more online. I should definitely more do that, but mostly what I say, my projects are connected to companies that don't want me necessarily to put things online, but I did do that for Cirque du Soleil, the cocktail dress. You can find a project in where I built a Faraday cage dress. It's called How to Get Fashionably Struck by Lightning. So that's also on Instructables, if you want to make your own Faraday cage dress, and also some other things, some hacks and all. So you can find that on Instructables. Then how I like to document things. These are light up kitty ears. So I like to specify all the parts and put it on there. Definitely like test it out with somebody, because you think that you can you put a do-it-yourself online, right? And people solder things wrong in the end, for example. So that's not super handy in that case. So yeah, step by step, how you put it together, where you can download the model, how you can print it, how you can make it yourself. And that's kind of a fun way for yourself to document your process, to also have it online. Sometimes you can go back like, oh, how did I do that? And then you can go back to your own Instructables, or do it yourself, sort of. But that's kind of a way that you can do that. Things that I get my stuff from: Adafruit, SparkFun in America, Pimaroni if you want to work with Raspberry Pis. They have really cool boards that you can put on top of it. DigiKey and Mac Mastercard is not super known, I think, in Europe. And Arduino.cc if you want to start with coding. That's the platform that you're also using, that I started with once my stuff got smaller, sort of. And I think if you go a few more, because I think I just copied this one wrong. Sorry, I'm just going to slide through it. Yes, that's what I wanted to show. Yeah, correct. So this is really cool, and that's I thought you guys might like that. So I'm trying to make things 3D printed, pretty complex. It's pretty expensive as well. So these children in Vienna, I believe it was in Vienna with their teacher, they recreated the spider dress out of Lego Mindstorms. And again, like doing it from like 3D printing is one thing, and getting servos to work and all, but they did this from a medium which is Lego. You know, this is really hard to do. But what they did, and I think it's so cool, they used the infrared sensors. They used the brick from the Lego Mindstorms. And then if you go one more. So that's the dress that is based on. And one more. The system is actually working as well. So it's actually like mounting out. And again, doing this from a medium, which is Lego, is super difficult. So that's, I just want to share because I think it's super cool. And then they also saw me making the Drinkbot dress. And then they also made their own Drinkbot dress out of Lego Mindstorms, because on the former one they said like, oh, we made this, sorry that we duplicated your design. I was like, no, it's super awesome. So now they're on a mission to recreate all my designs from Lego Mindstorm, and I think that's the coolest thing of just the community and all of that. And the other thing is the Dare Droid that I talked about before, the Truth or Dare game with Marius Kintel as well. We presented it at a cocktail making festival called Robo Exotica. We did that in 2010. And they recreated this dress, and they actually went back to the same festival that we released it at and presented this design at the same event, sort of. So that was really fun. So yeah, so that's the end of this presentation. So I just wanted to see if you guys have any questions. And the other thing that we want to do is introduce you to some of the stuff that we have around us, like 3D printers. There's soldering stations. So that's another step that we can do after sort of the question and answer round. So anybody, any questions? Yes.
Your work is very multi-sensorial, you can say, except maybe for scent or smells. So, for example, you can make your spider dress more aggressive by emitting a certain scent.
Ooh, I like that, like dirt or something. Yeah, I worked with, for Cirque du Soleil, I created a perfume dress and a perfume suit, but in the end, it was like you can find it online. It was a system with sort of a band. It pushed different scents into the bottle, but in the end, the whole if I have it in a box, and if I still open it, there's so much smell to it, sort of, you know. So working with smells is really cool, but it's also like very very messy from a sensual sensory point, sort of, you know. But I know. Yeah, it's really difficult to do that. Yeah, I did do it with a company called IFF, International Fragrance Society, I believe, from New York. So they knew exactly how to mix those smells. That's what we worked with, and it actually smelled really nice, like the perfume. But still, it was a lot for me, sort of. So if I open that box, it's just all the smell coming out. I know that the military in America is busy with a system in where they train like military people, and they want to make them smell mud, for example, you know, to have them more in the mind space of like battle and all of that stuff. So I'm mostly not too fond of government projects, but that system is kind of cool what they're at the moment creating, sort of. But still, the smell of mud might be for me different. I come from the Beemster, where they have a lot of cows, right? And the mud in America. So that's kind of a thing that they're dealing with at the moment, which I think is really interesting. Same as if you're working with colors, the color red means love in Paris, and I think it means hate in Asia, right? Or in certain parts of the country. So that's always an interesting sort of connection to that. But yeah, like that. I'm always wondering how you have DJs that do the mixing with perfume and fragrances in spaces. How they deal with storing their devices in the end, because it must smell a lot. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. I'm curious what you're working on now. What do you have in the pipeline? And if you have any interest in going to clothes that are in some way functional, if I can call it that. Like I was thinking, you know, biking here from the station, and, you know, you're at a good temperature state when you start biking, but then you're biking and you get warm.
Yeah.
It'd be great if your clothes like automatically adapt to that.
Yeah, there were actually during the Dutch Innovation Day students that came up to me, and I told them they can maybe work with Jeff Peltier cooling elements, so which you can cool down and make hot as well. But then the body also it's just such a giant amount of heat that we give off, right, and all of that stuff. So that's quite interesting. But I know that it might be. It might be Saxion, actually. They do a few things with, and if you go to Connect You can also see some of that solar panels, like building that into vests, I believe. And they also work with heating, like little elements in body warmers. I don't know exactly what they did it for, but that was kind of interesting to see. So yeah, people are like embedding that. There was also, after a talk that I did 2 days ago, there were people that are motorcycle drivers, and they were talking about if they would fall, that they have like airbags coming out of their suits, which I also think is pretty interesting. And apparently there's a company that has that, and they had an interesting solution, but you need to pay a monthly fee, otherwise you're not covered, because they also need to cut the suit again and push it in the airbags, and so you need to pay a monthly fee, which I thought was kind of interesting, because if you don't pay it and then you fall and then your suit is not working. So I'm wondering if there's another solution to that, sort of. Yeah, definitely. From that sense, I think there's a lot in this field already. Being explored. What I really like is things that are more like from a robotic nature. So like basically inventing things that are not there, that are a little bit like witty or play with like certain scenarios, sort of. And also the other things like healthcare, like Philips. They're doing a lot of like medical research to especially like body signals as well. There's a lot of like interesting research like within companies, but it never really comes out because they use it as research, and they never really bring it out, sort of. But yeah.
Have you thought about integrating solar cells to get electricity?
Yeah, but you cannot harvest enough. Like also kinetic energy is kind of cool because we all walk, right? You cannot really necessarily harvest enough to really make like big robotics run. That's the only thing, yeah. So you can make some thingy things bleep and blink, sort of. It's definitely cool, but you need to harvest much more for some of the things that I'm doing with that. But it's quite cool, and yeah, solar can now be how do you say that, woven in to fabrics and all. So then it can also be washable to a certain degree. So that's kind of an cool thing. But then really your whole jacket needs to be, or your whole suit needs to be solar in order to harvest the power, sort of.
You need a lot of batteries, probably.
Yeah, and yeah. Yeah, well, that's always the thing that I say, like, the batteries that we need to use, in the past I used LiPo batteries. That's something that you don't really want to have on your body. I use rechargeable batteries now because you can find them everywhere. Also because it's really hard to get LiPo batteries out of when you're flying. They always think that you have a bomb with you, like, no, and I got so sick of it, so I'm only using rechargeable batteries. So I used to work more with 12 volt, I use only 5 volt at the moment. But yeah, that's always my question to the battery industry, like when are batteries produced for the things that we are doing, sort of, because the batteries that we need to use are square and big, and we want like flexible, organic, round, right? So that's going to be super excited if they start to look into this stuff and actually develop batteries a little bit also more towards those kind of things. And it's there again. It doesn't. It might be threefold, and so on. But yeah. Yeah.
Your take on biomaterials.
Um,
Wondering, like, if you do a lot of the 3D printing
Yeah.
stuff, it's still all plastic.
mhm.
So like, does like sustainable plastic exist for using in prints, or?
You can use filaments that are bamboo woods, but still you have a certain degree of like plastics, glue, and other materials in there, sort of, So there's other kind of cool things with 3D printing in and I forgot their name. They use plastic recycling bottles, and for a long time that was a problem because recycling it's called angel. Sort of angel material, in where the material is very pure, so they could not recycle bottles. But there's a company, and I believe they're from the Netherlands. They recycle bottles in Bali, for example. There's a lot of bottles there, and they make filaments, and then they print buildings at the moment from it. So that's kind of a cool thing. But you still have to deal with plastic, sort of. What I'm really interested in is you have SMA, shape memory alloys, Nitinol Fleximol. If we at one point would be able to print with them, because you can actuate them. Now I need to use servos or something in between to actuate, but if you can actually 3D print and then actuate the material, that would be like super, super cool. Definitely. The good thing about sort of this is that we can use software in order to really make the design how you want. Like mostly I do 1 or 2 prints, but I never throw away the old stuff. I always reuse it. So I mostly use the prototype then for myself and the final one for the client. So actually you don't create too much waste with it. So that's kind of the cool thing. And also SLS printing is powder-based printing, and in the beginning they didn't do that, but now they found ways to recycle the powder that you're not using, so you're actually using the full material, other than when you're working with other 3D printing techniques. You have a lot of material, right? Or sometimes your print doesn't work out and you have spaghetti. So like SLS is kind of a more expensive technique, but they are able to recycle the powder now a little bit, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, it would be cool. Like that's what I thought in the beginning. Like, oh, cool, bamboo filament or like wood filament. But then still, there's a lot of like plastic still involved in it. So that would be super cool. But there was another question there as well. Yeah.
I was wondering, what's the role of femininity in your work?
That's a good question. I think, the spider dress is pretty masculine for me, sort of. Like, there's a lot of, like, how do you say that, things on the shoulder. That's a good question. Like, how do you mean it? Sort of, how can you...
Well, in a traditional way, you say
Yeah.
On the other hand, I was a bit in doubt if I would ask you this question because you're focusing on robots and
Uh-huh.
stuff. But in the way you present everything, it feels, looks, and seems to be feminine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that plays a
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it.
role here or-
Yeah. I think, yeah, unconscious. I think because I'm a girl myself, sort of, also like my background in fashion design, you need to choose, that's kind of weird, you need to choose man or female clothing. So that's kind of funny, especially when I started with it. So my background is like female clothing, so that would be more like a dress rather than a suit, for example. So that's basically the traditional way that that can get taught, sort of. The cool thing with Cirque du Soleil, what I've been recently doing is for every dress, I also make a suit. You know, so you have a boy and a girl, which is kind of cool because the new suits are like a boy cocktail, like a boy cocktail suit, and a girl has a dress. So I should actually swap it up at one point. But yeah, so then they're being more presented as like female and male. The problem if I design for men, if I design for female, it becomes a little bit more like, in my mind, like masculine. If I design for male, it becomes too feminine. Sort of, you know, so I haven't found really a good balance to that. But a lot of people have been asking to make a spider dress suit for them. So that's maybe the next thing that I should try.
In addition,
You want a spider dress suit?
yes.
Renee is saying yes. Sign me up.
In addition to that, did you think of making fashion for robots?
Yeah, there was a robot at one point. Oh, so the maker from Sophia the robot. Her name is Sophia, right? From Hanson Robotics. They make the girl. She's the first robotic citizen in the world. So I spoke with them, and we were talking about like making maybe some dresses for her, or like some designs for her. Yeah, that's very meta then, a robot with a robot dress. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah, because now most of the robots are naked, so they need kind of clothing. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for being such a big inspiration and pioneer for your work. I would have a question about were you close to the gap between biomimicry and robotics, and if there are like some projects in soft robotics that you have been exploring?
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, biomimicry is mimicking nature. Within that field, I like to look at animal behavior. So most of my designs are based on sort of animal behavior. I think soft robotics is really cool, but the problem with putting it on the body is that your body also has a bounce. And the spider dress, if it's from a mechanic nature, or gear-based, I have a certain accuracy, so I can. You use in robotics, we use the term degree of freedom. The more degree of freedom your robot has, the more you can do with it. So I've really the accuracy in the space. If I work with soft robotics, the model needs to be standing really still for it to not spoil what's going to happen, sort of. So I haven't really found the good in between of that yet. So I've been using a lot of like silicons and softer materials, but somehow I always like the accuracy of robotics, sort of, you know, because if it's already your body is making that bounce, and then but there's a lot in soft robotics which is quite interesting, and I really love the aesthetic of it as well. Yeah, like using the silicon and the tubes and all of that stuff. Yeah, and biomimicry is really nice, but that's innovation at large, or technology like from Velcro. Just most of the things around us are inspired by animals, because animals are awesome. So cool. So I
I was also wondering with the ideas about the spider dress that you show people like around the model, like are they in their personal space or not?
Mhm.
Do you also see like an everyday practice for the technology? So people are really avoiding crowds, or for example, to say that they can show like, oh, get out of my space, for example.
Yeah, in one case, I've been collaborating with Georgia Tech, which is in Atlanta. There was a girl, and she works for the Sonification Lab in Georgia Tech, and they are themselves blind or deaf, and they make their own interfaces. And she came up to me that she really loves the spider dress. She heard about it, and she can see 5%. She can see some movement, so she saw the design like slightly. Her problem is that if she's in a crowded subway or something, she can just not say that things are too much for her because she doesn't have the vision and she gets very claustrophobic. So that was quite like inspiring to think of maybe a device that can help in that situation, because you don't want to really say like, hey, my sight is not that good, right? So how can your garments basically do that for you? So there's an I have a lot of reactions with people that are actually blind or don't see that well, that are really attracted to these designs, sort of. So that's one thing. Then in the time of COVID, we live in Florida, and people don't take the measurements so serious. So you have the distance, and everybody was like, fuck COVID in Florida. So I actually made a proximity dress in where it had like these hip elements, and when people stepped into my personal space, the dress would make itself bigger. And I was not really like, oh, I cannot come close, but it was more like, oh, why to have the notion of like making a statement. They say like, oh, what's happening? And then I can say, well, you're coming at this moment too close in my personal space, you know. So that was kind of another thing that became that my research in personal space became a little bit more like recent with COVID. So that was kind of an fun thing there. So I think there are some interesting things that you can do with really having things like mount in the space, and then that can really take that space for you almost. But I don't know how handy it is to wear a spider dress in the New York metro, but the subway, so that's the other thing. Mm-hmm.
To make it visible without making it mechanical.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, or a dress that starts to scream really loud. I like that. Yeah, kind of.
Technology behind it rather than the mechanics to push, push out.
Yeah. Just shouting. Yeah, no, that's good. Also, thank you so much for pushing my presentation. That was super awesome. Yeah, I felt like you were like an interface. If I did this, then. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so the other thing is like, when I travel around, I love to go to spaces. You have hacker spaces that I grew up in. I love MetaLab in Vienna. There's a lot of really cool hacker spaces. You have maker spaces. And you also have fab labs. The fab labs are the most cleanest, but also a little bit boring sometimes. But there's a lot of like creative spaces in cities. And if you want to do things and playing with electronics, I think these spaces are just super important for every city. So thank you guys for having TkkrLab here. And I think the second thing is that if you want to know anything for like about 3D printing or soldering, or you want to ask me questions about sensors or things, we are here for you now. So I assume all the people that you see in the yellow shirts and me, if you want to just mingle around and see the TkkrLab, then we can do a sort of an
I want to thank you then for this presentation. What Anouk said, we're going to stay around. So if you want to ask anything, just ask us.